Gentlemen, sorry about that. Just slightly preoccupied there. Good morning to you. We're back. It's another reading with me, Richard Phobes, on Narrow Boat, or Of Narrow Boat, this morning by LTC Rolt, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm hoping that everything's working again. There's been 2 days of absence, and so the studio's been sitting idle, although I have recorded a couple of little pieces in here, but not with the equipment here. Just I did turn it on. And then I had a technical issue with the thing that gets the camera going, and I'm putting out a plea for assistance to buy a new gadget, but to do bigger and greater things for the Vobe show. So hopefully the lip sync, looking at my my monitor here, the lip sync seems to be well and truly out. Just a little bit. It may be the internet connection. I don't know, but hopefully we're all working. Hopefully it won't mar your enjoyment of today's show. Now, one thing I wanted to do, and that is, and I don't know if I can do this because I'm not sure if I'm all geared up. I was just been running around a bit this morning. Let me just have a look to see if that is not working quite as I wanted it. Oh, that's not working either now. Hang on a minute. I've lost me. I've lost me. I wanted to put up the maps to show where we're going and what's going on. But let's say good morning. Good morning to Mike Stevens. Good morning to Lisa. Good morning to Audrey. Good morning to Linda Kane. Good morning to Leslie. Good morning to Graham. Good morning to Sean. Good morning. Good afternoon to Sean, I should say, because it's clearly afternoon where you are. I forget sometimes where people are based. All synced my end. Oh, well, if it's getting synced up over to America, then we're all good. Lip sync's fine. Perfect. Excellent. It's just the feedback here in the local studio that it's all cocked up. Morning, Paul. So I'm just trying to remember where we are, the Trent Valley. I just thought, on Friday when we were reading and then we looked at some of the places, I thought that was such a great idea. I don't know why I didn't do that right from the beginning. But I'll try and sort of get to that after we've done a bit of reading. If anybody, I was going to say, could send me a link, but I can post it you can post it and I can copy and paste it and put it in my thing. Because I know how busy you guys get on Google or what have you, looking things up for me. It's absolutely fantastic. We've got this wonderful rapport. So I love that. So yeah, I've been dashing about this morning trying to get stuff, and I wanted to pre-read at least 2 chapters. So that's what we're going to do. I got the sniffles today, not sniffles as in a cold sniffles, not like, oh, he's got the COVID, but sniffles as in a bit hay. I don't really suffer from hay fever, but clearly there's a minor bit, I think, that when the pollen count is up, it does run a bit. So excuse me if I do blow into my hooter from occasion in this bit of old rag that I carry around with me. I should have got a clean hanky. Oh, it's embarrassing this morning, isn't it? Coming into the studio without a clean hanky. What was he thinking? Good morning, Fiona. Good morning, Anthony. Oh, excuse me. Good morning, Brian. Good morning, Derek from New Zealand. It's great when you say where you're from as well, so I slowly build up that picture. Morning, Sarah. Morning, Adrian. Morning, Vic. Vic Godfrey. Hello to you. Thank you very much for coming along this morning. Good morning, Rita, and friends. There we are. Right, I've got my little pig here with me in the studio today, which is grand. Morning, Steve. Right, so this is chapter 20, and we are, just so you know, get rid of that. We are just over halfway. And I was thinking about this the other day. I thought I had read this book and I had read most of it, but I think it's so typical of me that I'd read half of the book put it down, and that's the trouble with me. Another book has arrived, and I'm a bit like a magpie. Oh, there's another book, there's another shiny thing with a cover, and all right, let's read this one. And I do try to finish books, but sometimes when you're researching things, you've got what you wanted out of the book, and the rest of it is not really what was interesting you. Whereas this, of course, is a narrative, so it's slightly different. It could be coming. It could be from cutting the grass. Oh yes, it could be. Although I do get this from time to time. It's not a strong thing. Sean is in Australia. Oh yes, North Queensland. That's right. I remember now. I do remember. I do. Please forgive me. It is a Monday morning here. Absolutely. Sweden, says Anthony. Oh, in Sweden. Oh, it's interesting. How's it going in Sweden with the old lockdown? It's an interesting time now because different countries are relaxing their rules at different paces. So, oh yes, Rita, you're in Los Angeles. That's right. I remember that. Yeah, it's great having people in different parts of the world, and we're all going through this same thing together, but in slightly different ways. So it's interesting because I think we here in the UK are getting, well, some people I think are not getting at all edgy about it. They're still at their windows, holding on to their windows, going, "What are you doing outside? What are you doing?" There's still a number of those curtain twitchers or people going, "Oi, get in." But I think the greater number here now are going out. I mean, it's so busy out there. And in fact, my Board Explorer video for tomorrow, I have yet to film it. It is a nice day, but I'm going to go into town because I'm going to go up and down the main high streets in town and see what shops are open, who is open, and who is about. And just by observing, I'm not going to talk to anybody, but by observing what the mood is in a little seaside town, because we've not officially been said we're out of lockdown or anything, but there's a lot of chatter about how we get out of it. And I think a lot of people have interpreted that and taken it on their own minds that we're out of it. So not completely out of it, but I think most people, I think it's very few people will not be adhering to a physical distance from one another. Monday morning after a lazy weekend. Yes, lazy weekend. I filled my weekend with more stuff to do. There was just no sitting down. There's no lockdown, only advice from the government, says Anthony. Oh, where you are in, you just told me, in Sweden. Ah, right, yes. I'm interested to I think we're all interested to see how how much spreading is going on. Of course, there's, the doomsayers and everything. There seems to be so many doomsayers out there, all going to die in a horrible, miserable, agonizing death, I don't know. I bet a lot of people will talk to you, though. Yeah, they might do. I mean, I'm happy to talk to them. I mean, I ought to go down there with a bigger microphone, but you can't get close enough, can you? Say, "Oi, talk to." Oh, I could with my radio mic, with this microphone. If I went down with this one, this is a directional microphone, but I'd have to have it plugged into something. I may do that a bit later on, but today, just going to suck it and see. Just going to suck it and see like I normally do. Don Collins, good morning to you from Rotorua, New Zealand. Oh, great. My daughter's in New Zealand, and she says that it's all been cured over there. You haven't got any corona at all, but they're still, obviously, they're waiting for tourists where she is because she's in the hospitality business. Boom mic, yes, exactly. At the end of a poll, like the BBC. Yeah, I have a. Look, I'm supposed to be reading. You're distracting me. I have a mic boom. I actually have one. So, yeah, it's about 30 feet, something like that. I can't remember how long it is, but it all. How far away do you want to be? I did think I could carry this. I could carry this. You know, if anybody gets too close, you just nudge them back. Can you just stay back a bit, mate? Stay well back. I'll talk to you, but keep back, mate. Keep back. This is measured at the 2 meter distance. That would make a hilarious video, wouldn't it? Dear oh dear. I wish I'd thought of that at the beginning. Because you could have sold 2 meter sticks, a 2 meter telescopic stick. You would have made a fortune, you know. Gauge how far you are from your neighbour. Use the 2 meter stick, and yeah, that would be good. Or you could have a harness. Now I'm getting into the world of fantasy now, but you could have a harness which one end of it clips into like this, and the other one they clip into that. You can then could not actually get any closer because you both are at this 2 meter distance. It's hilarious. Oh dear, I wish I'd thought of that earlier. I could have made a fortune. It's all a bit late now, isn't it? Right, enough of this silly tea strainer on a stick. Yeah, I'm going to try and do this week. If we have a miserable day, I'm going to try and do one where I talk about my audio equipment. It won't be of interest to everybody, but I have been asked by a number of people to talk about all the different microphones I use. So it's particularly the tea strainer, because I know there's a lot of would-be filmmakers and stuff who also watch. So that's quite good. Anyway, who's Mike Boom? Yes, who is Mike Boom? It's my pseudonym, don't you know? Right. Now to the serious business. Now the bit that, you know, that we're here for, and that is the reading. So I'll try and not cock this up too much. This chapter is chapter 20, and it's called Yockerton Hall. The Trent Valley once more becomes broad and shallow above Haywood. Oh yes, the Trent Valley, that's what we want to find a map of. Let me just see if I can quickly get a map of Trent. I don't know whether Google Maps is the best one to do that, or Bing Maps, because you could use the Ordnance Survey. I wonder if Bing Maps would be better. Bing. Let me just look that up, see if we can do it. Bing Maps. Because Bing Maps, I do like Bing Maps. I've got to find where the hell the Trent Valley is now. Right, where were we? We started in Oxford, didn't we? He went. I'm getting confused now. The thing is, I'm getting confused with the J.B. Priestley book that we did. He went. I wonder if it helps. Trent Bridge. He gets to Stoke, actually. He goes to Stoke on Trent. There we go. Let's see where that is. Stoke on Trent, somewhere around here. Oh yeah, he goes to Trentham. I know vaguely where. And Stone. Oh, here we go. Hang on, let me get you where is it? Here we go. What we need. Bear with me a second. I'm just trying to get the. No, don't want that one. Don't want that one. That's the one I want. That's the one I want. I want it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Right, okay, so that's about, it's just taking a portion of my frame, so hopefully you can see that. Yeah, okay, you can. So he's going to end up somewhere here, and I'm going to go to the Ordnance Survey map so that we can see, here's the canal. So I'm not quite sure. Oh, this looks Aston. And then I think we can do, if I remember rightly with this one, we can actually zoom in. and get some vague pictures as well. Anyway, that's the Trent Valley. So this is roughly where we are. Your light behind you is on, says Busy Bee. Oh yes, thank you. Thank you, Busy. Right, let me just. Where am I then? I'm here. Okay. So we can come back to that in a minute. I keep wanting to move the map around. Yes, sorry. Right, so the Trent Valley once more becomes broad and shallow above Haywood, and our journey thence to Stone, though pleasant enough, lacked any special features worthy of mention. And Stone is... I'm just trying to see if I can find it for you. Where is Stone? I had it a minute. Oh, here, this Stone. Perhaps you'd rather look at the map than look at me would be better, wouldn't it? Let's go back there. Here we are. Give you an element of it. And then I can just read. You don't have to see me struggling to read. Okay, it included 4 locks at Who Mill, Weston, Sandon, and Aston. This might take much longer if I have to read. Oh, here we go. Here's Aston by Stone. Oh yeah, there's Sandon, and there's Weston down the bottom. It may be recalled that we passed. I better just do some reading, hadn't I? Because otherwise it's going to take forever. We'll come back to that. Because it's confusing. It's confusing me anyway. Right, so, yes, Aston. But with the exception of these villages, the canals wound through open pastures close to the riverbank and overlooked the tree-grit slopes of Ingestra Park, seats of the Earls of Shrewsbury. It may be recalled that we passed 2 villages named Weston and Aston soon after we left Shardlow. So it should be explained that there are 2 pairs of village so called upon the Trent, the state of affairs that must have caused no little confusion in posting sorting offices. When we landed at Stone, it was to find that the well-worn phrase, "we lost account of time," had, in our case, literally come true. We had believed the day to be a Friday, but the crowds of late shoppers aroused our suspicions, and we bought a Staffordshire Evening Sentinel to discover that we had mislaid a day on our week's journey from Shardlow. There are 2 breweries and a pottery works at Stone, while the city of Stoke is dangerously near, but in spite of this it seems to have escaped the desolation of Rugeley, for to walk down the single main street from the church past the Crown Hotel with its graceful bowed front is to feel that the place is still at the heart of a small market town. Is it? Has it really got that bowed front? This is too exciting now. What was it called? The Crown Hotel. Let's have a look, see if it looks the same. Where was that? That's Stone. We're all rushing to do this before each other now, aren't we? The Crown Hotel. See photo. Not a very good photo, but... What's happened there? Oh, I've gone to the website. That's the trouble. Right, well, this is going to take forever if I keep stopping. View image. There it is. I can't actually move. Well, the only way I can do that is to... Oh. What have I done? Are we still streaming? I thought I'd lost the stream then. Anyway, yeah, bloody Windows. Will you stop doing that? That's the hotel. Anyway, I'm going to stop playing because I've lost the map. Oh no, I haven't. There's the map. I think I brought the map out in a. Right, stop playing, Vobes. You're being stupid. Sorry about that. We'll do that when we're talking about it. Right, okay, sorry. Right, let's get on. Otherwise, the time will be over. Look, it's already 10 to 10. I've got to get out and do some filming. Okay, so yeah, he strolled past there. There are 2 breweries and a pottery works at Stone. Oh yeah, we went past the bowed front. It makes it makes it look like a market town. One of the many respects in which the industrial district of the potteries differ from any other is in the sharp definition of its boundaries. From any one of the 5 towns, a 6-penny bus ride will carry you practically into unspoilt country. No doubt the reason for this lies in the fact that they reached the limit of their growth at a very early stage in the Industrial Revolution, so that unlike manufacturing areas of a more recent date, their dormitories have never marched into the surrounding countryside. Furthermore, the exclusive and highly specialised craft of the potter has not attracted the usual drift of labour from the surrounding rural areas. Thus, it was hard to believe that at Meaford Locks, a mile north of Stone, we were only 6 miles from the heart of Stoke-on-Trent. From those rose-covered cottages at the foot, the flight of 4 locks climbed in leisurely fashion up a gentle grassy slope set about with trees in a manner reminiscent of Great Hayward. There is something incomparably restful and unfailingly satisfying to the eye in this combination of woodland and still water, so we paused by the top to eat a simple lunch of bread and cheese in the sunshine on the foredeck. It was here that we met our first horseboat we had seen since we left the Oxford Canal, a boat of the Mersey Weaver Company travelling empty towards the potteries. Whenever there was any likelihood of our encountering horse-drawn craft, we always took great care to motor away from the towing path so that we should be clear of tow lines. But on this particular occasion we were caught unawares, so that I had to clamber on to deck to pass the line over tanks, stove chimney, and shafts as the boat came by. Soon after we drew clear of the trees of Meaford, and then we sighted the village of Barlaston, backed by the chimneys of the potteries, and half an hour later we found moorings immediately above Trentham Park Lock, a point within easy reach of the city, but just outside the suburbs. Here, 10 years before, Cressy had been moored for a period of months when her former owner lived nearby, and the old lockkeeper, recognising her as soon as she hove into sight, welcomed her like an old friend. Later that evening he presented us with a basket of the finest runner beans we had ever seen, and when we thanked him, expressing due admiration for their size, he explained proudly that they were a special strain of his own nursing, which he called Yockerton Wonders. Now, the pottery folk have a great sense of humour, which finds a favourite and time-honoured expression in the mischievous art of gulling the unsuspecting or inquisitive stranger, and in this direction the name of Yockerton Hall has a prominent place. A guileless inquiry as to the whereabouts of an individual or the destination of some parcel or product is sufficient to set the old joke in motion. Yockerton Hall, replies citizen of Stoke with a sly wink at his fellow. The victim invariably falls heavily into a trap by asking, to the general delight, the whereabouts of this unheard-of place, receiving the surprised and surprising answer, "What, Dunna you know that? It's where there's neither land nor water, and they walk about on plonks. Convinced that this curiously insubstantial place was a figment of local fantasy, I was determined not to be caught, so I replied warily that I thought the curious conditions prevailing there were hardly likely to produce such a fine quality bean. To my surprise, however, he insisted, apparently in all seriousness, that this narrow strip of country between Barlaston and Trentham was in fact Yockleton. I allowed myself to be half convinced, but knowing the local ability to sustain such a joke with a poker face, and finding that my inch-to-the-mile survey map was suspiciously uninformative, I still have my doubts about Yockleton Hall. And I did look up Yockleton Hall, actually. There is no such place. It is a place of jokes. So there we go. I so like that when I'm reading. Love books with maps, and now Google takes ages to get through a book. Yeah, I know. Isn't it a pain? So he has now gone. Let's get the map back up so we can. That's the end of that chapter, by the way. So he has gone along this route up here, past Sandon, past all of this, Ashton by Stone, Little Stoke, gone through Stone as we read, and he'd walked up into the town of Stone, and somewhere, there's Barlaston, and gone quite a way. Here's the locks, and he's up here at Trentham. Just trying to find where the park is. There's the city of Stoke, but he is here at Trentham because he's going to go into the gardens in a minute. Let's just get... this is looking down on a satellite. There's a great lake at Trentham. That's Trentham Park on the Trentham. Oh, you can't see my mouse. I just suddenly realised you can't see the mouse. I think there's a way that I can make you see the mouse. I can't remember how you do that now. Anyway. Oh, yeah, okay. Do you know, where is it? Skype. That one, properties. Let's just have a quick gander if it capture cursor. There we go. So that's the gardens he's going to go into, and I guess, hang on, that's the river, but the canal is here, isn't it? Somewhere. No, that's the Bath Road. I've lost the canal. Where's the canal? Let's go back to the Ordnance Survey. Oh, here's the canal. So he's somewhere. Anyway, he's somewhere in this area. Near Stonefield, there's a body of water that looks like a duck on the map. Is there? Stonefield. It's back down there somewhere, isn't it? Stonefield. Oh, here. That's, yeah, no. That's a symbol on the map that tells you that it's not... it's a nature reserve. So they've got these on the OS maps. It's not actually a body of water. Cheeky. Right, let's leave him here at Trentham. And... let's get back to business. Where's the camera gone? There I am. Another, yeah, right. Okay, so this is chapter 21. Trentham Hall, once the seat of the Leveson or Leveson Gower family, Earls Gower and Dukes of Sunderland, is a beautiful place at the head of a large artificial lake, which we just looked at, situated between the river and the wooded slopes of the park, which in places rise steeply to a height of over 600 feet. As early as 1758, before canals were heard of in this country, it was the Earl Gower of that time who first commissioned Brindley to survey a line of waterway that would connect Liverpool, Hull and Bristol, and in the following year the engineer, as his diary records, frequently visited the Earl at Trentham about the navigation. It is now many years since the family left Trentham, however, and of the great Palladian mansion, it's many years since the family left Trentham, however, and of the great Palladian mansion, only the stabling and an arbour of the type beloved by Victorian romantics remain. Local legend has it that the smell of the polluted river flowing through the grounds was responsible for this exodus, and if this be true, the inhabitants of the Potteries have to thank the reeking effluent of their factories for providing them with one of the finest public parks in England. They were taking full advantage of their splendid playground when we walked through the park on a warm and sunny Sunday evening. The wide gravelled walks of the terraced gardens sloping to a stone balustrade above the water were thronged with promenaders, and the lake was dotted with small boats. On one lawn the potter was trying his hand at archery, on another at clock golf, whatever clock golf is, while he seemed to be deriving as much amusement as his clamorous offspring from the seesaws, whirligigs and swings of the children's playground. There was a finely built bathing pool so set in the woods by the margin of the lake that it did not interrupt the skillfully achieved vista of the original landscape gardeners. Also a ballroom and restaurant that were similarly unobtrusive, and glass houses where those who possessed no gardens of their own could buy cut flowers to brighten the blackness of their homes. The flowers and the trees, even the grass of the average urban park, bear the drab, dispirited look of the caged animals in a zoo. But there was little of this air of artificiality about Trentham. The bright green lawns could not have been more smoothly shorn, hedges of yew or box more trimly clipped, nor could flower borders have blazed more bravely with intelligently balanced masses of colour had they still been preserved for a duke's pleasure, instead of being free for the enjoyment of all who could afford a threepenny bus ride and sixpence at the turnstile. To a people who spend 6 days a week in the heart of a smoky industrial city, the value of such an outlet is inestimable, and the general orderliness and lack of litter made it evident that the people of the Five Towns appreciate their good fortune. The young pottery worker and his girl, who may be seen strolling in these gardens on any fine Sunday, or dancing in the ballroom if it is wet, are not only infinitely better dressed than their cousins in the south, but although often still in their teens, they are remarkably independent and self-assured. It is more likely that they both work on the pot bank. He is an oven placer, and she in the decorating room. Bound together by the ties of their skilled and exclusive craft, the Potters have always been a highly individual community, in which there is no social distinction but that of capability. It frequently transpires that Jack and his master were born and bred in the same humble row of cottages, and the southerner of the so-called middle and upper classes must drop his social pretensions if he wishes to be accepted by either. The thin veneer of Eton and Oxford culture often only a generation thick, is no match for the shrewd realism of the potter, whose life is founded upon an inherited tradition of craft. For no matter how the more class-conscious southerner may try to conceal the fact, he is aware that since England became a nation of industrialists and shopkeepers, the common denominator of class is no longer one of ability and wisdom, but of irresponsible wealth. The potter's craft, it's interesting because we talked about the potters when J.B. Priestley visited them only 7 years prior to this book being written, or 6 years prior, in fact. The potter's craft does not lend itself to organisation on modern mass production lines, and for this reason it is still carried on by a prodigious number of small and comparatively intimate family businesses. Thus it comes about that the pottery owner not only has a thorough working knowledge of his trade, which rightly earns him the respect of his employees, but he is on terms of easy familiarity with them, knowing most of the older hands by their Christian names. Master and man will drink tea together in the works canteen and discuss the merits of the latest cut shape. In this way there is preserved among them that spirit of community in craft, which is yet another tradition of the past that the modern industrial organisation has broken to its own despite. Though the immemorial art of throwing on the potter's wheel has suffered eclipse in the modern pottery, the process of casting by pouring liquid slip into the plaster of Paris moulds being more widely used, the craft still demands a considerable degree of skill and delicacy of touch. The unfired ware or bisque is naturally extremely fragile, and the operations of bisque placing and setting in are both highly skilled. The first consists of packing the ware into the earthenware setters or saggers in which it is fired, and the second the stacking of the saggers in the bisque oven for firing. Every craft has its own language, all of its own, and that of the potter is no exception. Thus the head placer is known as the cod placer, and the ladder on which he stands is his horse. It's interesting because J.B. Priestley 6 years earlier, when he was describing it, said they were still throwing the immemorial art of throwing. They were still throwing the clay onto the pot and doing it by hand, which is quite fascinating. Time and temperature are as critical in the firing of a pottery oven as they are in the brewing of beer, and the fireman is no mere coal heaver. An attempt has been made on the continent to mechanise this process by the introduction of an electrically heated oven with automated temperature control, through which the ware travels on slow-moving conveyor belt. But the conservative potters of Staffordshire are not so easily wooed by the tempting bait of mechanisation, preferring to trust their valuable ware to human skill rather than to a fallible electric supply emanating from some remote source. The firing of the bisque often takes 50... I assume it's bisque, B-I-S-Q-E, bisque. The firing of the bisque oven takes 55 hours, in which time 15 tons of coal are consumed. The skill lies in maintaining a slow and steady rise in temperature to the maximum of 1300 degrees centigrade and an equally steady cooling. Test pieces of clay are placed into small peepholes in the walls of the oven and are a guide to the process of the firing, or progress of the firing. When the oven has been allowed to cool for a further 48 hours, it's emptied, and when it has been scoured, the fired bisque ware is passed to the dipper, who applies the glaze by dipping each piece into a tub of powdered borax flint lead glass mixed with water to the consistency of cream. This looks a simple operation, but generations of skill inform the dexterous, almost careless flick of the wrist which causes the glaze to spread evenly over the surface of the ware. The ware is then once more packed into saggers and fired in the glossed oven. A firing of 26 hours is then required to set the glaze, but the same interval as before is allowed for cooling. After it's past this stage, the ware is stored in the white warehouse unit until it is required for decoration, after which it receives the third and last firing in the enamel kiln. This occupies only 14 hours and the temperature is considerably lower. My God, the intricacies of it. The pottery designer paints his pattern upon the china, but when it's decided to put a design into production, a copper plate engraving is made, from which transfer papers are taken to apply the outline of the design to the pottery. Colours and banding are then filled in by hand by the decorators. The design department of a famous pottery is bombarded with the efforts of aspiring designers, as a publisher with manuscripts or a patent office with specifications for a perpetual motion machine. Needless to say, a minute proportion are purchased. The modern pottery designs do not, in my opinion, compare with the unaffected grace of the old Staffordshire forms of 50 or more years ago, and we saw nothing to equal our own Gloucestershire slipware for all its technical crudity. There appears to be too much striving for effect, which results in over-pretentiousness and an insistence upon novelty to the exclusion of traditional form or artistic quality. The designer at the pottery we visited admitted this, but maintained that his job was to give the public what they wanted, and that the modern designs were the answer to that demand. I would like to believe that this is the truth, though it is difficult to determine, in this case, which is the cart and which the horse, the producer or the consumer. There can be no doubt that the modern manufacturer has been responsible for the lamentable decline in popular taste by bludgeoning the public into accepting his shoddy mass-produced goods by means of mass advertising and the elimination of competition. Yet, because it is a skilled craft, and since good and bad designs are equally costly to produce, I believe that the pottery trade has not yet been a party to this debasement, but has been forced to pander to it in order that it may survive. It's interesting. Sorry, I got such an itchy nose. It's an interesting time, isn't it, when we were sort of switching between handcrafts to mechanisation. It seems to be taking place on different industries in that sort of 150 years from 1750 at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution to when this is in the 1930s. So what was that? It's 200 years, isn't it? 1750, 1850. Yeah, so the 200-year period, pretty much. That they were still, and now, of course, pretty much everything's mechanised, apart from very few, and mass-produced, apart from very few things that are done by hand. Winchcombe is in the Cotswolds. If you can visit it and watch them throwing, etc., and talk to the potters, brilliant. Oh, yes. I'm sure, we've definitely had a resurgence in the last 10, 15, 20 years of artisans doing their stuff. Lobster's Bisque. I assume it's pronounced bisque. Great job title on the census forms. Take a drink, Richard. Your tongue needs lubricating, sis. Yeah, thanks. It's stone cold. Yes, handcrafting pottery is now on the rise again. Absolutely, and quite. I think sometimes you need to go through the mass production to realise that it was not such a great idea for people who don't have very much and they're not aspiring or unable to, they might aspire. I don't want to say anything bad. But, when need must, it's great to be able to have stuff. You don't want to be in a situation where everything's costing an absolute arm and a leg. People still need to go to the discount stores and buy mass-produced stuff so that they can feel a sense of having some nice stuff. But at the same time, once you're fed up with that and your income bracket changes, you can get some more nice, you can aspire to different stuff. It's horses for courses, isn't it? I don't think there's anything wrong or right, but it's all from a personal stance at the end of the day. It's all, the beauty is an eye of the beholder, and quite rightly so. The slip from which fine bone china is made is a composite substance consisting of 1 part Cornish china clay, or kaolin, I think that might be how it's pronounced, 1 part china stone of the same origin, and 2 parts of calcined beef bones, which give the china its distinguishing toughness and translucency. A considerable quantity of the china clay and stone used is carried from the coasting steamers from the ports of Fowey and St Austell to the Mersey, where it's transferred to narrow boats and conveyed to the potteries via the River Weaver, the Anderton vertical lift, and the Trent and Mersey Canal. It was this vital water communication which was responsible for the growth of the pottery towns, from a row of straggling villages housing no more than 7,000 inhabitants to the densely populated district of 120,000 persons 100 years later. If I remember rightly, when we were reading J.B. Priestley's English Journey, he kept harping on about the 128,000. I think he said 128,000. If I remember, that's the place of the potteries. So this is, as I say, only 6 years difference. So probably sharing the same census. The growth of Manchester following the construction of the Duke of Bridgewater's Canal, still referred to by boatmen as the Duke's Cut, was equally meteoric. Oh, how do you pronounce the word that's defined from meteorite? Meteoric. Few people realise, he says, moving on swiftly, how great a measure the forgotten canals contributed to the vast upheaval of the Industrial Revolution, which changed not only the face of England, but the whole course of our lives in a period incredibly brief, so brief indeed that we are still frantically endeavouring to induce our toddling social order to keep pace with the giant stride of the machine, and bitterly regretting, like Goethe's Sorcerer's Apprentice, that we should gaily pronounce the spell which set the genie to work before learning how to control it. Meanwhile, by one of those strange anomalies, I know Julia is now smiling, because I always say anomalies wrong, with which these pages of history are filled, the canal, the spell which loosed the machine, has not merely fallen into obscurity, but has become the last remaining stronghold of a people whose way of life has survived the whole course of the revolution, substantially unchanged, and who, therefore, retain to this day many characteristics of the pre-machine age peasant. The canal has also become so much a natural part of the rural scene that it's almost impossible to associate it with the great towns that it has brought into being, which is a fascinating observation, I think. Come to that in a second. Yet to realise the conditions existing in England when James Brindley set about the building of his canals is to appreciate the vast changes that have occurred in the last 150 years. Absolutely. So that I think is interesting. Let me just read that again. The canal has also become so much a natural part of the rural scene that it's almost impossible to associate it with the great towns it has brought into being. And I think that's so true. Whereas the roads are still connected to towns and things, and we see them as the arteries, the blood flowing into the towns. Whereas the canals, as a result of them being built, the towns grew and grew, but technology moved on to make the canals obsolete. And yet, because I suppose it's moving water and they're reminiscent of rivers, they just look like part of the landscape that have always been there. Yet, of course, they're entirely man-made. And the boats on them, just of a time when they look absolutely, they're sort of part of the landscape. And it would be interesting if we did that now, if there was no such things as canals, and there'd never been, and for some reason now we thought, oh, I know, why don't we have canals? And we came up with this concept of cutting channels in, and we put boats on. Imagine the hideous utilitarian type of craft that we would put on, some very bland, very square boats that we would design, the lack of design and the lack of imagination, that we would create something that was probably just a long, like a train, a square train that floated. It would be hideous. But because canals came in the Georgian period, when there was Georgian architecture and, there was art, the art respected the landscape in a way. So that's absolutely a fascinating. I love that. I love it when you get an observation like that takes your mind into different things. So he goes on. So yet to realise the conditions existing in England when James Brindley set about building his canals is to appreciate the vast changes that have occurred in the last 150 years. So what are these vast changes? Young, in his 6 months tour, this is Arthur Young, I assume, in his 6 month tour of 1770, relates with typical self-righteous naivety of a period that the inhabitants of North Staffordshire were devoted to laziness, drunkenness, tea drinking, and debauchery, while John Wesley, who visited the district on a preaching tour, was pelted with clods of earth for his pains, concluding somewhat understandably that their manners were coarse, and adding that he found them given to brutal amusements such as bull-baiting, cock-throwing, and goose-riding. Goose-riding? I've not heard of goose-riding. Can you imagine? They wouldn't get on a goose. Come on now, come on. From these comments, it's easy to picture the conflict still waging with mutual intolerance between the old, full-blooded rural order, which, though already impoverished and debased, was not yet dead, and the new spirit of repressive Puritanism, which was the first child of the commercial age. Of the prevailing conditions in the country at that time, Samuel Smiles, who was a sort of historian chap, gives an excellent impression of his life of James Brindley. Although referring to this particular district of the Midlands, it applies equally to the rest of the country. This is an interesting thing to finish off with. The earthenware manufacturer, he writes, though in its infancy, had already made considerable progress. But like every other branch of industry at that time, its further development was greatly hampered by the wretched state of the roads. Throughout Staffordshire, they were as yet, for the most part, narrow, deep, circuitous, miry, and inconvenient, barely passable with rude wagons in summer, and almost impassable even with pack horses in winter. Yet the principal materials used in the manufacture of pottery, especially of the best kinds, were necessarily brought from a great distance. Flint stones from the southeastern ports of England, and clay from Devonshire and Cornwall. The flints were brought by sea to Hull, and the clay to Liverpool. From Hull, the materials were brought up the Trent to Willington, and the clay was in like manner brought from Liverpool up the Weaver to Winsford in Cheshire. Considerable quantities of clay were also conveyed in boats from Bristol up the Severn to Bridgnorth and Bewdley. From these various points the materials were conveyed by land carriage, mostly on the backs of horses, to the towns in the potteries, where they were worked up into earthenware and china. The manufactured articles were returned for export in the same rude way. Large crates of potware were slung across horses' backs and thus conveyed to their respective ports, not only at great risk of breakage and pilferage, but also at heavy cost. The indispensable article of salt manufactured at the Cheshire witches was in likewise manner carried on horses' backs all over the county, and reached almost a fabulous price by the time it was sold 2 or 3 counties off. About 150 pack horses in gangs were also occupied in going weekly from Manchester through Stafford to Bewdley and Bridgnorth, loaded with woolen and cotton cloth for exportation. Even corn, coal and lime and ironstone were conveyed in the same way, and the operation of agriculture as of manufacture were alike injudiciously impeded. There were no shops in the potteries, the people being supplied with wares and drapery by packmen and husksters from Newport-under-Lyme, which was the only town in the neighbourhood worthy of the name. This is Smiles' picture of England on the eve of the Industrial Revolution, the England from which we have travelled so fast and so far. Can it be wondered that we stand bewildered? So true. So there it is. You know, there was all the stuff that was carried prior to the canals was carried over land on roads that were completely inappropriate for land travel, yet they did it because they had no other way. And then the canals suddenly opened up that wonderful way of carrying so much more in boats with fewer people involved. I remember starting my documentary, The Abandoned Canal, the Bald Explorer documentary, with the fact that I can't remember what it was, something like 20 tons could be carried from one place to another by 3 men and a horse. And it would be carried on a boat and floated in a narrow slip of water, thanks to the canals. And so started the Industrial Revolution. Please, can we see a period print of goose riding? Yes, let's see if we can find a period print of goose riding. Goose riding. Goose pulling, goose riding from old books. A goose whose neck is greased, being suspended by the legs to a cord tied to 2 trees or high posts. A number of men on horseback riding at full speed attempt to pull off the head, which, if in effect the goose is their prize. This has been practised in Derbyshire within the memory of persons still living. This from 1811 dictionary. Goose riding. Right, I'm looking to see if there's a picture. There is no... Oh, wait a minute. Goose pulling, goose riding, same sort of thing. That is a titchy picture. Here it is. Are you ready? Here it is. Let's see if I can move that picture over a bit. So they ride along and they try to pull the head off. I have never seen that before. That is quite gross. But there it is. How about that? How about that? We're on chapter 22 tomorrow. Industrial landscape. It is cool. Well, that was quite interesting, wasn't it? Please, can we see a print? Yeah. True, Keith. Sorry. Let's just quickly run through some of the comments. Wedgwood was mass producing using moulds. Most pottery today is slip cast. Thrown is quite unusual. Yeah. Lord, I've missed him the last 2 nights. What's that? He was not on for the last 2 nights. Oh, are they talking about me? How very true when you look at Birmingham, Manchester, about the canals. Yes, changing the face of a place. Partly agree. Some modern trains are things of great beauty. That's true. I mean, it's absolutely true that the trains, early trains, steam trains. I mean, I don't know whether it's just a perception thing, or people were very proud. The utilitarian, just being focused on how something, utilitarian is just focused on the doing the essential thing. So you could, a house. You see a house, it could just be a box with holes in it and windows. It's not terribly beautiful, but it does what it says on the tin. And then you make it a bit more artistic, so that actually, the art of looking, or not the art, but the environment, the beauty of it is a thing that you can't put your finger on, and yet it's so important. You need a physical roof and physical walls and physical windows in order to keep out the elements. You don't actually need the beauty in there to survive, but you do need some element of artistic beauty to satisfy the mental side of you. And I think it must have been just part of the psyche and the design of those times in the Georgian and early Victorian to just design things so they look good, rather than just doing the purpose that they needed to do. And we seem to have forgotten that now. When you look at places like water companies, the pumping stations, and you see these Victorian pumping stations, incredibly ornate and elegantly and beautifully designed, and proudly so. Whereas now you have a pumping station and it's a concrete box or a prefabricated something, and money is the key to it all, and it's so utilitarian that you pass it and it's just boring. And yet, we're a civilized society, and I think we need things to look good. You should check historic pictures of Goo's coal life, talking of utilitarian canal traffic. They used to have coal boats that were just tubs, nicknamed Tub Puddings. Yeah, I do know the tub boats. When I made my documentary about the Shrewsbury to Newport, and they went down into Telford, what was then the different towns that made up Telford. They used the tub boats, yes, and they were. I agree, they were utilitarian. And even the guillotine locks were a bit utilitarian, really. So yes, it's not like it isn't. I'm certainly not suggesting that there wasn't utilitarian stuff. I'm not suggesting that at all. But on the whole, when you look at the canal boats, and maybe they were utilitarian back then to people. Maybe we put a gloss over it. But I do wonder if the Google car came out, and we're all driving the Google driverless car, whether it would be no more than just a a curved blob, box shaped with curves, like the Google logo, that it would all be very similar. And I suppose it's variety. And, when you look back at cars, motor cars, and you look back in history, and particularly I suppose I think about the times from the 50s to the 60s, when you had things like the bubble car, the Morris Traveller, the Triumph Herald. You had cars that they weren't manufactured, whatever the word is, to make, streamline for air, whatever that word is. They're manufactured on how they looked, and you go, oh yes, this is, the Morris Traveller or the Morris Minor, and these beautiful cars that had shape and character and said something. Now, I mean, but now, they're pretty much all the same, apart from one or two who stand out, and then they look ridiculous the way they stand out, because they don't really have a character in the same way. I would argue. Geese come across as bad-tempered creatures. Methinks it would have been easy as all that. Yeah, it wouldn't have been as easy as all that. Well, I don't suppose if they were alive and you were pulling their heads off. Oh my God. I don't want to see that, says the lovely Julia. It is only a line drawing. It was only a line drawing. I mean, people have been awful, haven't they? Not what I pictured goose riding was. It looks dead in the picture. Yeah, I think they'd already had their necks wrung. Yes, they didn't have the internet or TV. Beautiful objects was their only entertainment. Exactly. So beauty was in the surroundings. Now, I suppose we're looking at a little frame, and that's where we get our beauty. They are impressive buildings, though, absolutely. Yeah, lockdown being released. The feeling of release is incredible, says Morton. Yeah, Morton, I did send you an email. I don't know whether I don't know whether you got it, about the Skype thing is might be testing my internet a bit, but it would be great if you do get a chance to make a little video and send it for the Vogue show. That would be fantastic, telling us about how it is over in lockdown in Spain. Although trains like the Mallard had both. Both utilitarian. Yeah, I mean, trains now are just boring things. Northern Narrowboater, he may not be PC now, but Woody Allen in Bananas had the shapeless, driverless cars. Oh, did he? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who've been ahead of the game, haven't they, in terms of what we were going to do. I don't know the film, but doesn't surprise me. Were they nice looking? That's the thing. And could you have, were they all the same? Were they all the same? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to go and do a video for tomorrow, so I better get myself organised. Thank you very much for coming along. 9:30. What should we do tomorrow? Let me just quickly pitch this. How do you feel about doing the reading in the afternoon my time, which would be 2 p.m. Is what I was going to pitch as a suggestion. What do you think? Selfie sticks have the same effect on me. Yeah. Bless your cotton socks, Richard. Thank you very much, Able Art. I was thinking of doing it from 2 o'clock, which gives me the morning to get out and do my video that I have to do. And then I can come back and do this, and then I can go and edit. But I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, because I don't want to upset the apple cart. I'll just wait for a couple of responses to see what you think. Or maybe I should give it 24 hours and start on Wednesday. 2 p.m. works for Julia, yeah. 2 p.m. good for Keith. Excellent. That's 6 a.m. here. So this must be late night then, Rita, for you at the moment. Good to see you back. 2 p.m. is okay. Later is fine. Whatever suits you. 2 p.m. is good. Overall, it seems any time is good, says Ben. I I can pretend to work at any time of day. You have to do what's right for you, Richard. I know I won't most likely be awake at 6 a.m. Well, let's try it. Shall we try it? We'll try it and see how it goes. We'll suck it and see. So tomorrow we will try one at 2 p.m. See how that works out, and if it doesn't work out, then we'll do it at another time. Is okay for me in sunny Tarring. Is it sunny in Tarring at the moment? It's looking. Just looking through a tiny crack. Excuse me, yawning. A tiny crack in the curtains. 2 p.m. was good because it's now 2:30 a.m. All right, okay. Not good for me. I'll be in bed. Ah, John. Okay. I know I'm not going to please everybody, but we'll try it tomorrow and see what happens. Okay. Grand. All right. We'll see. I apologise to everybody else it's not working for, obviously, with a global thing. But at least people can get to see it after the event and pretend it's live, I suppose. Anyway, thank you very much. So tomorrow at 2, we'll do what we do and see how it goes. And we'll get another chapter or 2 under our belt. And we won't do any goose riding in it at all. I promise you that. So thank you very much for watching. Let's get rid of this. Where's the... I've lost the tab. Here it is. Yeah. Catch you tomorrow. Take care, one and all. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.